Hello again, Internet. I'm back. I think I mentioned in my previous video that I know I did, that I was going to talk to my friend Steven. I'm confused about time zones. He lives in Seattle, which is 3 hours behind, and for some reason it was in my head that we were talking at 1, but it's actually not 2. So I've got another hour, so I'm going to take that hour to continue doing this basement thing. So one thing I was noticing, actually, let's take a little break and make a graphic. I've done that before. I think what I want to do when I was seeing this lineup, that's, I don't know, is it cute? It's a little cute. We'll put the basement just below the house and then have the basement kind of be like the basement icon as if it were extending the house in a way. I'll show you what I mean. So first thing, I'll just rearrange the position in the menu, which was, what was that component? It was called like menu or something, right? What a nice name that is easy to remember. Okay. So let's just see, we should have a nice position there. And what I'm thinking is to show like the bottom of that house icon transparently, and then have like show the basement underneath. So again, I'll show you. So I'm gonna start up Inkscape, which is probably gonna open on the totally wrong monitor. Yeah, it is, but I'll drag it over. If I can drag. Can I not drag? Okay, it was being crazy laggy. All right, so this is the program I use to do all of the stuff. It's vector based, right? So you can lay out lines in neat ways. And the nice thing about vectors is you don't have to be good at drawing because you can just change things whenever you want, right? It's really good. Oh, do I want different fills, but I can't decide? Right, I mean, it's really good because you can just do this stuff. So anyway, going to use this. What I'm going to start with is icon. This is like, yeah, so many things. I'm looking for development, web, poppy seed pets, and we want, not the dist folder, we want source, assets, icons, nope, images, icons. Yeah, here we go. So we want the house, which it's opening also on the other monitor. Yeah, I don't know why I did that. Fine, I don't need you. I didn't make any changes. Okay, so what I'm thinking is we'll put this like up here, but I'll make it kind of transparent, and then we'll draw the basement below. And I'll probably do several layers of basement to show that the basement is huge. But let's one layer at a time. The other great thing about SVGs, about doing vector-based, is you get SVGs which scale infinitely. So, right, you never get pixels. You just keep zooming in, and it's great. And you can also do fun things like the pet recolors. I've rambled about all this before. SVGs are great. All right, so I'm thinking a couple levels of basement. That's probably enough, and I'll do like some stairs. Right. And I want to copy paste these just to make sure that my stairs are the same height. That's good enough. And then other things you can do with vectors are join nodes together. So you're like, wait, I actually want this to be one shape. Great. And then I think I actually don't like that part being there. All right. So there's some stairs. And actually, we should, there we go. Because I'll fill it in like a slightly different color. So let me line these up. And fill it. So I think that, right, the basements can be filled some kind of gray. Oh, yep. Just have to get things layered right. All right. And this I will fill with, I don't know, darker gray. Does that make sense? Yeah, that's a basement, right? We'll just repeat that. Or should we mirror it maybe? Put it on the other side? Is that how a basement works? Let's say that's how a basement works, right? And then this part, again, I will just have fade out. So just for like efficiency, I suppose you'd say we'll delete the stuff that you can't even see because why have it? It's gonna do these helpful things to make curves, but we can get rid of all that. There we go. And then again, this whole thing, I'll just reduce the opacity to be like, you know, yeah, that is here, but whoops, I wanted, I was trying to put that behind with page down. Is that how we want that? I guess so. I think, but we're gonna want this I didn't give a hard line across the top, so let's put that on there. Okay. Okay, so I'm thinking that's the icon for the house, right? And you won't see this part on top, for the basement rather. Is that a good drawing for the basement? Let's see what it looks like in game. I will save as, goes in the menu, great. We want it to be an optimized SVG. I've mentioned this before, I was about to say PNG, I'm so used to using PNG files. Optimized just means it removes like all the silly metadata that Inkscape uses to track like Inkscape specific things that I don't need or care about. And it's happy to open plain SVGs, what they're calling optimized. Yeah, whatever. And then I'm like, wait, I disagree with that naming scheme, but whatever. And we'll call it basement because that's what we've called it. I think I've already made this link be to basement.svg. One funny thing about Angular, let me drag this over, for bigger projects like this, like I just started a new project and it would instantly catch on to new images, it seemed like, but this one, maybe it's just big enough, I don't know. It doesn't notice when I add a new image, so I have to restart it, and then it does a silly compiling thing, so whatever. I'll get that off the screen again. And once that reloads, actually maybe I'll just leave it on to demonstrate. Once this gets up, and do you like how the percent goes up and down? That's nice, that's how progress works. Actually, maybe it is. It reloads here automatically, that's what I was saying. So now we should see a nice basement. So, I don't know, is that a good basement icon? I would accept arguments to the contrary, arguments that say it is not a good basement icon. Well, that's okay. That wasn't the point. I mean, it wasn't. No, you know what? I'm here. It's only been a few minutes. Let's make this better. So part of the problem really is like I made those be stairs, but you cannot tell that they're stairs because from the zoom level, as it were, right? It's completely impossible to tell that that's doing an angly thing. So one thing to do there might just be to stretch all this. That way we make the, and then set all the widths back to 1. That should at least make it more clear that there's a stepping effect going on. I think another thing might be the color is just a little indistinct between stairs and not. Let's try that. I also wonder, I mean, ideally I would show like boxes and barrels and lamps and stuff, but you know, we can't have those kinds of details on a tiny icon. So basement, Inkscape is nice, quote unquote, and always wants to do its native SVG format, not actual plain vanilla. I mean, the SVGs it generates are compatible. They're not SVGs, but they've got so much metadata in there. The file size is like twice as big, which is completely needless, especially on the right. We want files delivered to the end user as fast as possible. That's you, so they should be as small as possible. Let's not muck it up with silly stuff. It's still kind of hard to tell. I don't know. Maybe I'm being too picky. I think I might go with that. We do have the faded basement. The only change I would like to make with the basement is it'd be nice if it faded out, as we went up. Like still started very faded out. But I'm actually not sure how to do that in like I could do that in Fireworks, which also does graphics like, very easily, but I'm less sure here. And also I don't know if then doing it that way in Fireworks would even work in SVG when you export to SVG, because it's really not. The reason I've started using Inkscape instead of Fireworks, which Fireworks I've been using for like a decade, literally, so I'm much more familiar with it, but it's just an older program that doesn't do SVG export nearly as well. So you know what, I don't know. Was this greenhouse good? I'm trying to defend the slightly not best basement graphics, so I'm gonna have to keep working on it. I'm gonna say this is good enough for now. The point is we have a graphic and I can tweak that later. Let's not spend hours. Let's close this for now. I can always come back to it. Let's start working on the backend part, the API, the actual functionality of the basement. So the first thing we're gonna need to do here, as mentioned, all these inventory items are currently accessible to your pets because they're in your house. I want you to be able to store inventory items that aren't in your house. But right now the game only has one idea of where an item is. An item is always in a house. That's always where your inventory is. To change that, we'll add a new column, a column that says, where is this item located? Is it in your house or is it in your basement? And then that's it. Then I'll have to update some existing logic for when pets are getting items to exclude the basement items. But that's kind of the gist of it. So let's do that, and I will try not to screw up making a new column this time. So as before, console make an entity. We're not actually making one. You may have noticed this. The make actually also lets you update one. I don't know what they could have called that instead, but whatever. We're going to make the entity inventory, and it says your entity already exists. Let's add some new fields. I have that. That sounds like something I would write. I appreciate that about Symfony. Just speaking my language, a casual kind of language. New property name. I guess I'm going to call it location. I could imagine a future where there would be other locations, and like I could do a Boolean of like is in house true false, right? And then false means it's in the basement. I kind of don't like that because it's not. I mean, it is semantic. Yes, it's in your house, but what does false mean? False is like, well, then where is it? If it's not in your house, right? So I think I'd rather have a location field that it'll probably be a number, and I'll do some things to make that easier to manage. We'll get to that shortly. But a number that represents where is it? Is it in your house? That'd probably be a 0. Is it in the basement? That would be a 1. And then in the future, if there's other weird places, be like, I don't know, I chucked it into space. That's a 2. Yeah, I don't know. We'll make something else. So I'm going to call it location. I don't know. I'm being too finicky by making a small instance of an int. There's no reason to do that kind of optimization today. Again, if we go back to the days 1.44 megabyte floppy disks or something, then yes, but whatever. I'm doing it out of habit. It's not a bad habit, so I'll keep it. Shouldn't be nullable in the database, and that's it. Okay, and then let's make the migration. I am ready. We'll create a migration, and then, oh, I wasn't ready. Let's remove that migration. I haven't run it yet, so this is much less of a bad thing than last time. So the thing that I want to do to the inventory is since there's going to be, that field is going to be filtered on all the time, right? Every time you look at your house, it's always going to be saying, oh, but what's the value of that field? I need to filter out the results, to filter out all the basement items, right? You might imagine how that could be an inefficient thing. If you've got like 1 million items and only 100 of them are in your house or something, probably more like 80 or something in that range, then there are many more items that it's thinking about excluding than it wants to include, right? Ooh, gosh, isn't that that's a little inefficient? We have indexes to sort that out in the database. You can index a field, it makes it super fast. I mentioned having the groups here to have that to have it be returned to the database. What is to the API? Sorry, what the location is. Sorry, I like switched track entirely, like mid-sentence, without taking a pause or a breath at all. So I mentioned in the last video, right? We add these little group annotations. This is called an annotation. It's a comment that means things. I understand if that's philosophically upsetting to you as a programmer. Annotations are great. You'll get used to it. I did eventually. But anyway, so there's an annotation here that says these are the groups it should be in when it's serialized to return to the front end via JSON. You know, and I say, okay, serialize all the fields that are marked my inventory or market item or whatever. I don't actually need to return the location. The front end, you might think, gosh, won't the front end need to know what the location is? It won't actually, because when you're looking at the house, you're going to make a request to an API endpoint that says, I want all the items in my house. And it's going to return them to you, and you don't need to then be told, oh, by the way, it's in your house, because that's what you asked for, right? That's the only way I'm going to let you interact with the inventory. I'm not going to show a larger thing that's like, and maybe in the future I would, and then I'll worry about annotating it later. But for now, I'm not going to make some page that's like, show me all my items regardless of where they are, and then let me filter down and blah, 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 right? And again, maybe if there's that space location, you know, that I made that up, I'm probably not going to let you chuck items into space. But, you know, if it turned out that there were like 10 different places you could store items, then maybe such a UI would be something we want. But for now, with just 2, don't need it, so I'm not going to return that location. We're not going to need to return that location, which again might seem unintuitive. But the thing I was talking about with indexes, we want that was a weird way to do that. We want an index on that field, and indexes are stored in the database. We can check them out here. And indexes, it just keeps more data. It makes the database bigger because it's keeping this table. I don't know how it does it internally. I kind of do. I believe it's B+ trees. I learned about them in college, but I've never had to use them except for in that one class. There's also red-black trees. I have no idea how those work anymore. Whatever, it doesn't matter. MySQL super smart engineer people have figured it out for me. The point is I can get much better performance by telling it, hey, this is a field that I want you to keep special awareness of to make queries on that field faster. Right? So I'm going to want one on the location field because, again, I know every single request about items is going to involve using that column. So here's a location column. We're going to make it on a field called location index. I don't know why it gets abbreviated. when I ask, why can't I think? When I ask Doctrine to generate indexes for me, that's how it likes to do it. That seems to be just the MySQL standard way. I'm sure that's a holdover from ye olden days, again, when every single byte mattered. Today, I would say, please spell out your words, but I don't know. The MySQL community understands, so I'll stick with their convention, even if it seems silly and old. So there it is, location index. And now I will make a migration, because the migration needs to include adding that index to the database. I mean, I could have done it in 2 migrations, but why? One migration can do both. So alter the inventory table, add the location field, small int, not null, all sounds great. Also create an index called location index on the inventory table on its location field. Sounds great. All that looks great. So we will run the migration. Doctrine migrations, migrate. And then we will see that new field added to the inventory table, and we will also be able to see the new index. So here's our location index, here's our location field. They'll have all been given a value of 0, all the way down. Something else to note, actually. The game, when you make new items in code, in PHP here, if I say, oh, make a new inventory item, I have to provide values for all of these fields, or else it will get angry. If you try to add something, it's like, I have this location field, but you didn't give me a value, and it's not nullable. What do I put here? Freak out, die, explode, throw you an error, and it won't work. We can get around that here with the Doctrine entity classes by giving a default value. So I'm going to say the default value is 0. If it's going somewhere else, I'll know in the code, but like all the existing code currently that's making inventory items, I don't want to go back through all of them and say, oh, but add it to the house. Because that's where everything goes, right? When you open a paper bag or a baker's box or a fruit and veggies box or whatever, any of those things, when your pet collects an item, all goes in the house. That's where the majority of stuff is going to go right now. So default B0. As mentioned, I don't actually want to refer to the locations by number. That's going to be very hard to remember over time, right? Especially in the future if I've got, again, 10 different locations. I'll be like, wait, was 2 chucked into space, or was 2, thrown into the volcano, or, whatever other weird locations we might have in the future. I don't want to have to remember that, because that's an opportunity to screw up. Again, let's not code things in a way where I can forget and screw up, because I'm a human and I'm going to screw up. So I love enums. Enumerated types are great for this kind of thing. PHP, as I've mentioned, does not natively support them. Drives me little bananas. It's okay. We can fake it. So I'm going to fake it. I'm going to make a location enum class in here. Let's just copy this one. Why not? It looks small. So what I'm going to do is we'll make some different constants. We'll have a const called home, and that will be 0, and we'll have a const called basement, and that'll be 1. And when I add new locations in the future, I'll put them in here. And then all I have to do now, when I want to use these things and know what they are, we're going to use location enum, and it goes home. And again, I get that autocomplete, right? I can't forget now. I don't have to care. Is it 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, infinity? It doesn't matter. Don't care. We can't actually count to infinity with integers, only positive 4 billion, and actually this is small int, so like 65,000. Also, I don't think it's unsigned, so 32,767. Wow, powers of 2. I remembered those once when I was in middle school. I don't know. Anyway, don't have to remember, it doesn't matter. We use these wonderful enums and we'll know. So I'm going to use those from now on. Makes my life so much easier. That's also great. Let's go do this in set location. If ever I call set location, and I'm a dumb idiot and I pass in a number and it's not a valid number, I want this thing to scream at me and break. I want it to break the site, because it's not actually going to break the site. It's going to, the you guys experience, it's going to break the site when I'm testing things. So I'm going to add a little logic here to test that out for me. I'm going to say if location enum is a value location. Actually, if it's not a value, then we want to throw an exception. And I want to say location is not a valid location enum value. Something like that, doesn't matter. So this is one of the helper functions I made. This is like, again, if PHP actually supported enums, I wouldn't have to do this. I would just tell this, oh, you have to be of type location enum. That looks syntactically like it works. That doesn't actually have the effect I want in PHP. Again, PHP just doesn't do enums. But that would prevent me from passing in, right? I wouldn't have to write this code. But PHP doesn't, so we're faking it, doing the best we can. I added this little helper function called isOfValue on all my enums. This is part of why I copied the flavor enum, is it includes this use enum, the final class stuff, whatever, all these other little things I've done to make it pretend as much as possible to be an enum, even though it isn't. Anyway, so we have this isOfValue thing I added that will check using horrible reflection. Are there performance impacts? I'm sure there are. Fortunately, we're not creating locations on like thousands at a time, so the performance impact will be minimal. And the bug reduction, I think, will outweigh the performance impact. Right? Downtime affects performance as well. So anyway, this is all good. We now have the basics for items living in different places in the database, but not in the code. So if we go to, there's an inventory controller, it gets all of your items at home. It's called my. Here we go, find by, find from the inventory where the owner is the user, and we sort by when it was last modified. That's fine, but no longer good enough. Sorry, I'm kind of trying to space things out because I'm going to want to make this part a little bigger. Owner isn't the only condition that this function needs to do now. This one also needs to care about location, enum, home. Should only find items from home. And actually, we might, my home, my quantities, what do we have here? Available recipes. This is for recipe stuff. This also needs to operate out of home. Preparing items. Do I want to let you cook items that are in long-term storage? So here's the gameplay thing. The purpose of long-term storage is efficiency of the game. It's not to be a pain in your ass, right? A limit is a pain, I understand that. No one wants, everyone's like, oh, I need more space. I mean, partly I know that's not true, because what happens when you have more space is that you fill up that space, then you need more space again. Like, you can observe this in every single game that has any kind of limit on inventory. It fills up, you unlock something that lets you have more, then that fills up and you want more again, right? It's a treadmill, it's a never-ending problem. Whatever, that being said, I do want to give you enough space to work with. So what I'm getting at here, recipes. Should you be able to combine items in your basement, including items in your basement? I think the only sort of weirdness I worry about, but then there's a way to get around that, but I'll mention my thought process because I'm thinking it right now. If you were to combine some items from home with some items from the basement, that would be weird. And the UI isn't going to let you seem to do that on the front end, but again, poking at the API, unless I restrict it in some way, you'd be able to. That may be confusing. I can kind of show how that might be a little later. I guess what I'm getting at is, if you can prepare items in the basement, it probably needs to be like, either you're preparing items using basement items so that the final product we know goes in the basement, or you're preparing items using items in the house, in which case the product goes in the house. Because if you prepare items from both, it's like, well, where does it go then? You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of weird. And if it doesn't go where you're looking, you're confused. Which again might sound weird, because I was talking about how you're only going to see the house and you're only going to see the basement one at a time. We're not going to have a global view. So why am I even thinking about this? I'm thinking about interacting with the API directly, where you can pass any numbers you want. It doesn't matter what the UI is showing you. You can do whatever you want to the API using a tool like Insomnio or something. And I want to make sure that the logic works, even if you're not using the website. Basically, it needs to. I mean, it needs to, in terms of like hacking accounts and stuff, right? Like or doing things with the game you're not supposed to. And also just data sanity reasons, right? Like, if I don't account for it and then that lets you put the game data in a weird state and breaks it, that's a problem. It needs to be consistent at all levels for data, I don't know if you'd say purity, but for security reasons, for everything. So I'm just always in that mode. Doesn't matter what I'm doing. That's like automatic. My brain goes there. And that's an awesome best practice. Have that as a programmer. Always be thinking about people not using the system in the way that you intend, because bugs are going to happen is another way. Maybe there's a bug in the UI that exposes something you didn't mean, whatever. There's a million ways that things can go wrong, so make sure at every level you're doing whatever you can to prevent things, right? Including things like the inventory, right? I should be good and only pass in. Why can't I find it now? I'm trying to find it to make this point, right? I should be good and only pass in allowed locations, but I might mess up. Or maybe it can come from the API and then someone could pass in something wrong. Like anything, you just don't know. So again, just protect yourself at every level. They call that defensive programming, which isn't a term I actually was in my brain. I was Googling about stuff like this and was like, oh yeah, defensive programming. I've heard that term, but I just never think about it. But I should, because it's useful. It's good to know the language to tell other people what you're talking about. So you can Google that, look it up. Anyway, going back to the inventory controller. Same for selling items. Do I want to let people sell things out of their basement? Again, I think so. Why not? Again, the purpose of the limit isn't to make it a pain for you to sell things and prepare items. The purpose is so that when pets run their hours, the server doesn't get bogged down. So yeah, you should be able to set sell prices. So, and again, what I'm going over here is like, do I need to change this function? Do I need to set the limit here of, oh, but only items in your house? I think the answer is no. It can be items in your basement that you can change the sell price of. That's fine. Can you throw away items from your basement? Sure, you can throw away items from your basement. Let's scroll up the list here. Can you prepare items in your basement? Again, we're saying yes, but it should probably be all the items that you choose to prepare are in the same location. So that is interesting. Let me see what that would be. That would be something here. So we'll say we want to get all of the locations. So sorry, what I'm trying to do here is I'm going to let you pass in whatever numbers you want into this function through the API. Again, maybe there's bugs, maybe you're being sneaky and poking at the API, especially because I've shown you how to do this, or will with tools like Insomnia. Feel free to poke at other websites too. I mean, it's just an interesting thing to do and a neat way to learn about how things work. So what I want to do here is add a little check and say, okay, maybe you gave me items from the house, maybe you gave me items from the basement, maybe you gave me items from outer space or the volcano or whatever nonsense I make in the future. I don't care as long as they're all the same. So that's the check I want to make, is I want to go through all the items that have been given to this function and say, are they all, is their location all the same location? And if it's not, then there's a problem. I can think of numerous ways to do this. The thing I was going to do until like 5 seconds ago was there's a function called map. You'll find it in a lot of languages. It lets you turn an array of one type into an array of another, and you give it a little transformation function that's like, here's an array of objects. I want an array of integers, and the way we're going to get there is for every object, you're going to pull out its location ID, right? And then we would have just a list of numbers, and that would be a little easier to check. I think what I'm actually going to do instead, which is kind of funny, we can do a couple things. First, if the count of the inventory is greater than 1 is the only time we could have this problem, right? If you only passed in one item, then there's no issue. If there's more than one item, okay, then they could be different locations. So let's do this. Let's get the location of first item. I'm going to be super semantic with my names, partly because I'm being watched. I don't know what I would call it if I wasn't being watched. But I want to get the first item, and we want to get its location. And then we're just going to go over all the other items that were given, and if any of them have a location that isn't the location of this first item, then get out of here, right? And that's an easy way to fix. And actually, we can check that. I will use an array, one of those kind of array manipulation functions. We're going to say, if not, I have an array functions helper class. If, oh, here we go. We can say if any. Okay, yeah. If any of these items, which are inventory, pass this function here, where, let's see, I get location. If any of them have a location that isn't the location of the first item is what we want. Location of first item. And because PHP is silly, you have to tell it when you're using variables outside, which I realize makes this code look bananas and horrible. I will explain it in a second. Is it complaining about that because it says I want an iterable? Yeah, guess what, it's fine. I don't know why the array helping is bad here. Okay, so if any of the items match the description of this function is what we're asking here. Okay. And this function says, let's just break this down multiple lines to make it nice and easier, right? This function will return true if the item, if the given item's location isn't the location of the first item. And then any is going to go through every item in this array and call this function on it and look for one. And the first one it finds, it will say, great, I found one. I found an item where its location doesn't match the location of the first item. If this happens, then we have a problem. Hopefully that makes sense now. Using these array manipulation functions might look funny because I'm using array functions. That's because PHP doesn't have a built-in any or some. Other languages would have any or some or something like that. I think in JavaScript, ES6, it's some. And then maybe in Link for C#, it's any. I think you would just use find. But find might return multiple. I don't remember. Every language has them. They all have slightly similar but different names, and so it's very confusing. I can't ever keep it straight in my head. But right, we have like array map, array filter, all these kinds of functions. PHP doesn't have an any or a some function. It does have a find, which I could use to accomplish the same purpose. Any is a little more semantic, or again, some maybe as other languages would call it. So I built my own, and it just loops over. And whatever, does trickery, doesn't matter. I'm going to put this back on kind of one line. I'll do it this way. And then, yes, so okay, so what happens? We say if any of our items meet this criteria of not having the same location as the first location. If you've been especially observant, you may notice that it repeats the check on the first item. I'm not too worried about that. It's just one item. It would take more work, both manual and automated, to not do that one item, so who cares? Anyway, if this condition is met, then we have a problem, and we're going to throw a new unprocessable entity exception, and we're going to say all of the items must be in the same location. And that's it. And again, if you're playing the game using the UI I have given you at poppyseedpets.com, you will not ever encounter this message because the UI is only going to present to you currently items in the house or items in the basement. This is for you have to protect your data at every level. For people who are botting the game, which happened on SciPets and happened at my, at our website at work, where I, my actual quote unquote my actual job. I don't want to. It is my actual job. I don't want to downplay what I'm doing here. I consider this a job as well, deserving the same time and respect and everything else as my other job, let's say. But anyway. Bots will happen, bugs will happen, all kinds of things will happen, as I already rambled about. You just have to be careful. So here it is. If you have more than one item, do this check because they have all got to be in the same location. Okay, great. Also, I should say, regardless of whether or not it was only one item, we do want to know the location of the item because when we produce a new item for you, from giving inventory here, give inventory needs to take now a parameter that says where should this item be. So we would pass in the location of the first item because again, that all the items have the same location. The location of the first item will be the location we want the output to go. Give inventory now is going to need a location. We're going to give it a default value. I hope it lets me do this here. It is a const, so I think it will. We want it to be location enum home, right? All the existing code calling give inventory, which isn't specifying a location, should default to home. And then here we can say set location to be the location that was given. So now when you prepare items, they'll all go into the basement if you prepared in the basement, or home if you prepared from home. And again, all the other places which are calling new inventory will go to your home. And actually, I'm surprised it's so few. This function is probably called in some other way I'm not thinking of. Actually, that's interesting. What is doing give inventory? Probably making a single inventory is the more common thing. Pet collects item. That's what I was thinking of. This function is called all over the place because pets can collect items in a bajillion ways, right? How many instances did it find? 142 calls to this function, right? Pets collecting items will always go home. I might as well do this now since I'm here. They should go home. Pet items will always go home. I mean, same with when pets attract bugs. Always put the bugs home. Although it'd be funny if the bugs went in the basement. I'm glad we're doing this. Let's make it so the bugs but you would have to have the basement. Yeah, let's not do that because I don't want to have, because then I have to add a check here for like, well, if the player has a basement, then there's a chance that a bug gets in the basement. I do really like the idea of bugs getting in the basement, though. Okay, I'm doing it because it tickles me if we want to use weird phrasing. So if the pet owner unlocked Unlocked, there we go, get unlocked basement. Okay, if you've unlocked the basement and a random number from 1 to 2 equals 1, so basically we're saying, and 50-50 chance, 50% of the time, then we're going to set the location to be the location of the basement. So if you've unlocked the basement, half of the bugs will go in the basement instead of your house, because I'm amused. And actually, the house is upstairs. That's where the pets are actually coming in, so it should maybe be a little more common. Let's make it so only 1 in 4 bugs go into the basement. The fact that I even think about that logic is stupid. No one's going to notice that. It's like, oh, it's because pets come in through the front. Like, right? Like, what? No one else is going to have that thought process, but whatever. Here it is. There's 1 in 4 chance that when pets attract bugs, they go into the basement. Here are all the bugs that exist in the game, by the way. Great, yeah, let's look. What else is in here? Receive item. That's an interesting function. What calls that? 48 places. 4th of July box. So here's an interesting thing. If you open a 4th of July box in the basement, then the item should go into the basement. If you open it in the house, the item should go in the house. So we're absolutely going to want, and I almost don't want to make that an optional parameter for that reason. I want to go now and find all the places this is being coded and or called and update them accordingly. So let's do it here. If you open this item, collect 4th of July box, there should be, oh, this is for collecting the box, not opening the box. So I'm sorry, so that does go in your house. What else? I was thinking of these ones. Okay, so this will go in your house. Okay, that's fine. So let's do that. Location enum goes home. I was like, why is it still underlined like it's angry? Okay, if you collect, what is this? The the different boxes, baker's box, fruits and veggies box. Yeah, when you register your note goes home. Yep. Okay, let's find bookstore. When you buy books, those should go to your house. Yep, import that. And again, just like in TypeScript in the previous video, we have to have an import for the different types here. It added it somewhere. It's interesting it doesn't go in the middle. I wonder how it decides where to put it. PHP is probably doing extra smarts, which, I don't know, probably fine. I don't really care where it puts them. Book flowers, that's the florist. Great. Okay, here's where it gets more interesting. If you open the 4th of July box, whatever the location of the item is where we want to put it. So inventory get location. That looks like it's going to get, I don't know, I don't like calling a function 10 times in a row. It's not 10, but looking at that, again, this is just like a habit that, like in this case, it doesn't really matter, but it's a good habit, so I don't feel inclined to fight it, is like, if you're calling a function, who knows what that function does? It might do it, there might be a ton of crazy logic in there. And I'm gonna call that function like 7 times in a row. How many? 6 times in a row? Nah, that's nonsense. What we're gonna do instead is say location equals inventory get location, only call that function once, and there, just pass in the results from calling that function once, because it's not gonna change. Again, in this function's case, I happen to know it's only 1 line. That doesn't actually hurt that bad to call it 3 times. Also, I told you you're not nullable. You're not nullable in the database. Okay, sorry, small optimization, kind of. So yeah, whatever. Again, it's a good habit to have. Functions can do a lot. Don't call the same function 7 times, 6 times. I keep trying to make that bigger. Don't call it 500 times, just call it 1 time. And then you're good. Okay, so that was that one. Let's open a bag of beans. Same issue. And same issue, it is going to call it many times, although having said that, look, it also calls user, this is the description. You know what, let's do that. Description and location. And description is this. Whoops, yeah, that's good. And location is inventory get location. Yeah, why call those functions so many times? And it makes the line a little shorter. That's also a nice thing, although it's still, this little line here is like, depending on how hardcore you subscribe to these things called PSR, it's like PHP standard, I don't know, how people think you should code PHP for real. And I'm saying that, which sounds like I'm putting it down, but there's a lot of good stuff in there. One of the things that is in there that I care a little less about is like, oh, if your lines are greater, they must not be longer than 120 characters or something. You got to trim them down. I'm like, whatever, who cares? I'm not going to go through the effort of breaking that up into multiple lines. It's just going to look weirder. And it doesn't matter, I never come here. I have to scroll, oh no, I'll get over it. Same thing here, we want the location. These descriptions appear to be different. I don't know, should I be optimizing those as well? Potentially. Get location, all right, definitely doing that one at least. Right, like why go the user and get name, but again, it actually isn't that hard, and now I know. I mean, I already knew, whatever. Let's go and keep doing these. Location equals inventory, get location. I didn't know starting this, I didn't realize that adding new location is going to be this much work, but I mean, it's not that bad, it's fine. Location equals inventory, get location. And in theory, maybe I should be checking. This is, again, type helping is so good, or type hinting, whatever, from the IDEs are so good, it auto-completes that, right? I don't have to type inventory, I don't have to spell out get location. It's there, and the fact it's there tells me I'm doing it right? If it didn't auto-complete, then I'm doing the wrong thing, saving me from mistakes. And that's where it's always good to do the type hinting and all that stuff as much as possible, because it protects you and lets you be faster in two ways, because you didn't make a mistake, and because you didn't have to type the whole word. Win, win, win. Inventory get location. It's only called once there, so I'm caring less apparently. Location equals inventory. And if you're paying super close attention, you might be noticing these are all functions like, what's this one called? Open a very strong box. What's in a very strong box? Looks like these, and ooh, I don't know, you could probably figure out what that is if you thought about what letters could make those shapes. I'll never tell, but they're there. So you're getting an inside view of some things. Fish kebab, oh my gosh. Location equals inventory, get location. Let's do a little bit of fun. Type on 3 lines at once. Oh, I did it wrong. That wasn't the best demonstration. There we go. Fruit basket, same thing. Location equals inventory, get location. This turned into a boring video. I'm sorry. Well, on the other hand, you are, again, you're getting to see the weird things like, what do all these items give? Oh, I get to see the code behind a lot of these inventory items. What's a magic hourglass do? Apparently it does this. Apparently it gives you, So this is interesting. The crazy magic energies flow through the house, swirling and dancing with chaotic shapes you're pretty sure are fractal in nature. I don't think I want you to open this item if it's not in the house. So let's change that. If inventory get location doesn't equal location enum home, then we're going to return something different. We will return an inventory service. What? Response service. I was like, what? That doesn't sound right. Response service. Success. And apparently we like give some messages and some extra data. So the message here will be you don't want to open this here. It won't have the full effect unless opened in the presence of your pets. Although I don't know how you would know that. This isn't the best, I'll just say somehow you get the feeling that your pets would like to see. In some ways it's kind of, sorry, I'm pausing because I'm also thinking of another thing. Like, in a lot of game design, it's generally true that it's worth letting people do things in as many ways as possible. Like, it's better, quote unquote, to do this in the house. But like, I could imagine, I don't know, I can't imagine right now, but as more items are added and they interact in different ways, if you can open this in the basement, that might possibly be useful. Like, what if there was some other item that was like, that reacted to things being open in the basement, or for some reason you didn't want to give the hourglass to your pets, but you did want to get the sand out or something. Like, in the case of the hourglass, there's not as strong of an argument. But again, it's like a good sort of framework to work under, of like letting people do things kind of as flexibly as possible. Don't restrict things, because you want the opportunity for things to interact in interesting ways, to get emergent properties out of your game, because that's free. That's like free experience in your game if you have emergent things. When different items come together in interesting ways, different mechanics come together in interesting ways, that's free content. So don't stifle that. So I kind of feel like, on one hand, for that reason, totally let you open the hourglass in the basement. But on the other hand, especially right now, like, it would be really sad if, like, especially if it was your first one, and you open this up in the basement, and like it didn't do anything, and you just got grounds, and you're like, why did I do this? What was the point, you know? I mean, the other thing we could just say is, even if you use it in the basement, the crazy magic energies do flow throughout the house or something. I'm going to leave this here as a placeholder, and it can be revisited later. I just would like to see the effects. I like to watch this happen. I don't know. That's what's going to happen. I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing. Or do I make it so that when it's used in the... It would be nice if there could be an "are you sure" with the item interactions, because that would be a really good thing to do, of like, using it in the basement won't have the full effect. Are you sure you want to use it in the basement, right? So that you still can, but the item inventory isn't set up to allow that right now. And then have it not have the same effect of adding pet hours. I don't know. I'm going to leave it like this for now, but that's a lesson for everyone watching and a thought for me in the future. And what would be great is if in the future I'm called out on this, because people are like, wait, Ben, I want to be able to use it in the basement because I have realized this emergent property, and you've disappointed me by having this limit, right? I would love to get that feedback and be like, you're right. Yes, let's make the game better. That was meant to be temporary, and I forgot because it's been more than an hour, and that's how long it takes me to forget these things. Let's keep going through these items. Sand dollar. Get location. Paste these through all here. Bonk, 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 bonk. Okay, and it looks like almost done. If I was editing things, I would, I don't know, edit this out, but I don't know how to use the video editing tools, so you get to experience this. Maybe we'll see other interesting cases like the whatever, the thing. The basement, the hourglass. Oops, did that go? Location. Almost. Location. Location. What item is this? A scroll. Here's some items you can get out of a scroll, apparently. What scroll is this? The sea scroll. So many scrolls. Someday people will get those scrolls. If fruit basket value, what is this? House service. This is the thing that, so this is after you have been playing for 8 hours, you get the fruit basket for free. So that should always go in your house, obviously. Location, enum, home, and trader service. Same kind of deal, everything you get from the trader, because so that's another interesting point. Should you be able to trade items out of your basement? That will require more coding, so I'm going to say no for now. I'd have to do something on the UI that's like, where are you trading from, your basement or from your house? So that would get complicated. So for now, I imagine that's going to be a feature that people are going to request pretty quick. Part of the reason for adding the basement is to make collecting items for trading to the trader much easier. So people are going to want that. But for now, it's just going to be the house that all the trading happens on. And again, this is for the item you're receiving anyway. It's going to be a whole bunch of other stuff to make him be able to like take items out of any location other than your house. I think, actually, that's a very interesting point, because there is a remove items function, and that's going to be need to be told where to remove from. I think right now he would kind of remove willy-nilly. It'd just be up to like their ordering in the database as to whether or not it picked one from your basement or one from your house, which isn't exactly what we want, so we'll see about that. Here's when pets poop the dark matter, which of course should always go in the house. And there's 2 varieties because, as you can see, there's a 1 in 20 chance that it adds a random, like, silly comment to the end. Because silliness, whatever, because I went through the trouble to do such a nonsense thing, whatever. We'll call it polish, which is an interesting thing to say about a poof mechanic in a video game. That is all of the instances of calling receive item. Oh my goodness. Where else can items get? Okay, pets attract random bugs, pets collect items, those all go in the house or wherever. Give inventory, we saw is only called from 3 locations and they're all taken care of. What was this? Prepare a recipe, location of first item, great. Greenhouse, always to your home. You know what, let's not make this optional. Let's be explicit about where they should go, especially since it's only 3. I'm not so worried about it. The other one was the one where it was like, maybe that should have been the optional. But then the reason I didn't make it optional was like, well, I better check. And we found some good things by checking. So I'm glad that it was done there. I'll probably be glad that it's done here too. What else is here? Build quantities from inventory. That's a totally separate kind of utility function. It doesn't ever give you items, so it's fine. What we're really looking for is any instance of creating new items, which is something I can search for. So where was, yes, here. Find usages of inventory. New inventory. Sets of location. Yeah, and they're all in here, and we've all handled them. These are the only place that new items are added, which is good. That means I've done my job right. There's one service responsible for creating inventory items, because I don't want to have to hunt all these down. I mean, I already did, right, in a way. It would be worse if I wasn't putting one consistent place. It would be much harder to find. Actually, I guess not that much harder, because I'm looking for calls to new inventory. But there's, what did I just click? Copy reference, fine. There's other ways that you could add items to the inventory into the database. You don't have to use new inventory. You could call MySQL directly. I'm not going to do that. I'm trying to use MySQL as infrequently as possible. We caught a glimpse of it a little earlier. It messes up. You get into weird states if you combine raw MySQL with Doctrine, like using its objects, because it keeps a kind of a local cache, and if you're updating things kind of out from under it, it's not aware, and so you get weird results there. It's usually good to just do everything in Doctrine. If you have to break out into MySQL, you know you're doing it, you know to be careful, and whatever. So anyway, oh my goodness, so that was a whole lot of crazy work. All the inventory stuff is taken care of. What were we doing again? Oh yeah, we want to let people look at their inventory on the UI. So let's go back. I think all this stuff can be closed. No, these are what we want. We want the inventory controller. So this is where it all started. We want to get items from home. We're going to add another thing that gets you items out of your basement. I could imagine in the future, again, as I add more locations, maybe this would be a URL parameter. Maybe we should just do that now. So what we want is, and I don't remember the exact syntax for this, but I think I've done it. Gosh, I've done it somewhere else for like JSON versus, yeah, I'm not doing that here. Pattern? No, come on, I know that's true. Let's check 0 to 9 or something. Oh, look, we're in regex mode. That's not what I want. I want to literally find these things. A to Z? Yeah, there, that's a pred match. There's some kind of way that you can specify patterns on these controller actions of like, inventory controller must have it actually, because like here, we say it's a parameter called inventory, but it loads that and it's hooking up extra smarts. I'm sorry, I'm not explaining things fully. So you can put these parameters into URLs, you put them in curly braces, and that means, could be anything, whatever the user wants to fill in. I say user, but whatever URL is hit, whatever's in that space, it can be anything, I don't care. Symfony and Doctrine will do a little bit of magic for you, where if the name of that, if what you name that, like it doesn't have to be the word inventory, it can be anything, but if that name matches a parameter, and the parameter is an entity type from the database, then it will say, oh, I'm going to interpret whatever is in there as an ID to look up one of these inventory items. So it will look up items that way. It's super handy. But when you don't want to take advantage of magic like that, and you're like, well, I want to accept any of a few different values, then you have to do some other business yourself. So let's do that. We'll also have another route of just my with nothing else. Which should also have methods of, why did I do it that way? I don't know. Because now I'm just going to put this back on top. Whatever. But I want some restrictions on that location thing. I only want to accept certain locations like home or whatever else, basement in this case. And actually, I guess I don't. I guess I want it to be an integer because we want to use one of the locations out of that enum. So let's check the enum. If not location enum, we'll use that same isValue thing. If the given location isn't a valid value, then we'll throw a new unprocessable entity again. Location, we'll just say invalid location. I don't know. Invalid location given. I don't know, something like that. And then the location will default in case it wasn't provided in the URL, because we're now giving this function two possible URLs, one where a location is specified, one where it isn't. When it isn't specified, we want a default value. For integers, the default value is 0 anyway, but again, I just want to be explicit so that it's very clear what's going on and no one's guessing. It's like, well, what is the default value? The default is home. It says so right here. You don't have to know that integers are 0 and 0 means home in this case, right? That requires too much thinking. So default location is home. And I guess I don't need any restriction on location then, because we're going to check it here. I mean, I could make a restriction of it. Well, let's look it up for demonstration purposes. So we want Symfony routing, and we want patterns is what we're looking for. Here's multiple pattern in a single Symfony routing. That might be kind of what we're talking about. No, that's that stuff. Yeah, those patterns aren't good enough. ID, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, they're saying the same thing, that I was talking about where, but this is an actual, like, patterns, like regex. Looking for regular expression. There we go. The requirements. Here we are, requirements. That's what it's called. It's called requirements. Yeah, I wasn't going to remember that ever. Okay, so requirements, we want location to be a decimal. I guess /d means a digit. I would have done 0 to 9, and I feel like I still want to, because that's what I know. It can be any number, 0 to 9, and as many of them as you want. And that's what we're expecting. We'll do it their way, I guess. Maybe I should get used to it. Multiple digits is a requirement for location parameters we can specify again. So let's try hitting this. So I was talking about using the database. Let's actually try and interact with some of the inventory now. So I have a get inventory function. This bearer token needs to match like whatever my session is. And I could go look that up in the database. I often find it's easier just to look here because it gets passed along with every string. Here it is. Here's my bearer token. And when I get inventory, it should return inventories in my house. I have no extra parameters. That should just work. Away it goes, taking a long time. Can I watch that happening in some other window? I don't know. Okay, came back. It says I got a sweet beat. I mean, that should match whatever it looks like is in my house when I go to my house. It's probably going to take just as long to load here. Okay. Sweet beat, wheat, sweet beat, wheat. Okay, great. Also, if I add /0, I should get the same result because 0 is home. Whoops, my 0. That should be all my items at home. Same thing. If I ask for 2, it should say, get out of here. I don't know what you're talking about. Invalid location given. Great. If I put not a number, Symfony was going to handle that for me. It says 404, not found. There is no URL that matches that, which is fine. In theory, I could do a 404. I was kind of thinking about that when I was writing that. I was like, should I say location not found? I mean, that's kind of what I'm saying, right? But whatever, it's fine. If I say 4, right, sorry, we still know that's invalid. If I say 1, it should be okay with that, but give me no items, data, nothing, because there's nothing in my inventory. Success, but nothing is in my basement, I mean. So we can fix that. We can cheat and put something in my basement for now, and then we'll make up the API routes that actually do that movement. But let's just go ahead and find one. Owner ID is 1, perfect. Let's put this in location number 1. So what is this? I got this from a Strongbox. It's a rusty rapier. All right, So that should be my basement now. Here it is, Rusty Rapier, and presumably it was somewhere in here. There's the Rusty Rapier, but when I reload, it shouldn't be here anymore. It should be in the basement. That should only be fetching basement stuff. Or sorry, home stuff. Rusty. Yep, no Rusty Rapier on this page. Okay, so all that stuff is working, right? We have now items that are in the basement or in the home. I will say, however, that item actions, I'm pretty sure, aren't obeying that restriction. I'm also pretty sure, as mentioned, the trader is just going to pull stuff out of, even though, yeah, I don't know how it's going to work. I think he's going to pull, I don't know how it's going to work. I don't know how the trader is going to work. I'm going to have to look into that later. But let's worry about the pets first, because that's what this is all about. That's why there's this inventory limitations. We cannot have pets considering all the items. So if we go to, there's a pet service, and when they take actions, actually I think that's house service. Run hour, okay. So when they run an hour, there's a function somewhere in here. This is if they've got poison in their tummies from having too many drugs, basically, alcohol, caffeine, and mushrooms. But somewhere in here, here's where they poop dark matter. Don't look at these numbers. Don't look at the secret math. What are you doing? Stop looking at that right there. Don't look at it. Let's find the part where they find all the inventory. Here it is. Get crafting possibilities. These are the functions that do it. Get inventory quantities. This is the function. This is the function that's super important. That's probably being called for multiple locations. And it needs to tell your house. What's indexed by? Oh, I don't even remember that. Oh, do we ever index by anything? Do we ever index by anything? Index by name. Yeah, I guess that's true. So when the pets are getting inventory items, what they really want to be able to do is quickly look up, is there an inventory that has this name? And know that the quantity by name. Whereas other times it's just, yeah, I just want the quantities, it's fine. Like for available recipes, we're gonna have to go through everything. It's gonna be a crazy business. But anytime the pets are looking at things, they're like, well, but do I have a fluff? And so to make sure that is super quick without having to count through your 100 items, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, oh, here's the fluff on the 7th one. PHP does arrays funny. They're really hash tables so you have key value pair, a dictionary, it's called in other languages. They're really dictionaries. So what do we want to index by? Well, we say by the item name then. That way in the code I can say, oh, but do they have fluff? Do they have plastic? Okay, they got fluff and plastic? Great, we're good to go. So that's why I index by name. So I do need to know that. And why I was wondering is like, oh man, but it's like a parameter at the end here. So we're going to put the parameter in the middle. It's more convenient if we can put parameters on the end for backwards compatibility with old places the function is called. Eventually things get so crazy and big, you end up saying, I'm not going to have 20 parameters. You're going to have to send a configuration object across or something. This function is not new at that point. But anyway, we're going to have an integer location. And we're going to put that in here as well. And where the inventory location equals the location that is given. And we'll set that parameter as well. So location, good. So right, we need to be able to restrict this by location. Now all the places calling get inventory quantities, they're going to have to pass that location along. That is fine. Get crafting possibilities. So crafting possibilities should always come from the house. So that will be location enum home as mentioned. And we'll put that in this one down here as well, which, yep, wants the reference. So what I'm pressing here, like to get that import, what it's doing here, I'm sorry, I've done this a few times and not said anything about it really. So it's saying undefined class, location enum. That's because I don't have that using import, whatever language, they all use different words for it, but I don't have that line up there to tell it, where is location enum defined? I need to know. PHP Storm, you press Alt-Enter, and it gives you like all kinds of help for any kind of problem that the cursor is on. If it's like, I've never heard of this variable, or I think there's a typo in this English word and I can tell you're using English words because it's in a string or whatever, it will provide some help for that for Alt-Enter. The thing that's going to do here for an undefined class, which is styled in this particular way, so I can easily tell, oh, it's yellow and underlined and all that stuff, is going to be import class. I don't even have to click that, I just press enter again, because that's what I want to do on an import class. So what I've been doing here is just pressing Alt-Enter, letting go of Alt, pressing enter again, and that puts the import line up in here, or sorry, the using line. It apparently put it again in the middle. I don't know where it decided to put them. So that's just me using crazy fast keyboard shortcuts. I actually learned that from the designer at my current job. He found that Alt-Enter thing to do that autocomplete. I had no idea. He was using that on the Angular side. And I was like, wow, what a great trick, Jason. Thank you for showing that to me. Yeah, it makes my life better. It makes everyone's life better. Anyway, that's done. The only thing here is this guy, my quantities for available recipes. When is that called? My quantities. Why am I saying available recipes? Huh. I don't know when this is called. I'm worried that it's called by the, the reason why I'm not just saying, oh, home here, is because there's the Cooking Buddy. And the Cooking Buddy will let you prepare items. And I feel like if the Cooking Buddy is at home, then he should suggest recipes to you when you're at home. And if the Cooking Buddy is in the basement and you use him, then he should suggest recipes to you using that in the basement, right? That would make sense. I don't know where my quantity is called, but we can find out. Also, it's getting very close to 2, so Steven's probably going to call me soon. Oh my God, he did. He messaged me to say, let me know when you're set. Okay, let me go solve this mystery, and then here I'm going to send a message to him. Here's Steven. Hi, Steven. Finishing up a little video recording. Will be just a minute. Count the seconds. Okay. Yeah, oh good, he gave like a little thumbs up or something. No, that's not a response, that's just his emote, his avatar, whatever. Okay, let me find where that function is called from, and we'll find out what we need to do. Find in path, my quantities. Nothing to show. Is it not called anywhere? I'm freaking out. It's got to be called somewhere. It's not called anywhere? This is telling me this function is never called anyway. Available recipes, my quantities. Get inventory quantities, my quantities. It's not called anywhere. How is that possible? Nothing to show. Ah, file masks. Bad file masks. My quantities. Doesn't matter, there's still nothing to show. Well, I guess this function isn't being used anywhere. If this isn't, this is a reason, right? If I find this, I do this at work all the time too, because it drives me crazy. And it's driving me crazy right now here on my very own project, and it's no one's fault but my own, and I know it. It often is anyway, even at work. If nothing is calling this function can GTFO. I never want to run into it again for just this reason. You come here and you're like, oh, I have to update this, but how does it work? What's calling it? Wait, is nothing calling it? And then you're like, what? Why did I spend all this time untangling this thing that isn't used anywhere? Get it out of here. And if it turns out I actually needed it, it'll be in source control. This is another reason why you use something like Git, SVN, whatever. Git is the popular one. Just use Git. GitHub is free, and there's Bitbucket, and there's all kinds of things. I'm sure others that I don't even know about. You can host your own repository if you don't trust other people's services. Anyway, you can get things, because it keeps a whole history of right? Every line of code, every character typed, everything. It keeps a history in a super convenient way. If I ever need that function back, if I deleted it by accident, I'll just go back. I'll find out pretty quick, right? And I'll just go back and pull it out, copy paste it or whatever back into the code. So it's not a problem. So anyway, I didn't actually get to code the front end at all because we discovered all this fun stuff. What this means is that I probably did something wrong, right? Like how many changes were made? Like a bajillion. Actually, we can find out. Let's go to, this isn't even the one. If we go to Poppyseed Pets API, speaking of Git, here are all the changes we made, right? 23 lines added, 2, 1, 3, right? All these lines added. I probably made a mistake somewhere. So there will be a lot of testing. Maybe I'll do some of that on my own time, but I don't know, it sounds boring to watch. I feel like this video was already pretty repetitive, just tracking down all those location additions. But for sure, at least we need to get the actual UI up, so that'll be the next thing. And we already did a little bit of testing here to see the inventory items in the basement, right? We were seeing that division happen, at least on some level. The next API functions to Maker ones let you move the things around, move items from the home into the basement or basement into home, and then we can build the UI for it. So that'll be easy compared to everything that was just done, all that horrible refactoring. So anyway, thanks as always for watching. If you have any thoughts about this video, it was boring or super interesting actually, and you loved every minute of it, and you're worried I'm gonna stop doing these things, I don't know. Let me know either way. probably it's leaning more on the boring side than the interesting side. But regardless, thanks again for watching, and goodbye.